redeemed, rehabilitated, and real entertaining. This is the Carl Jackson Podcast.
All right, welcome to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. I want to play this video of Vice President Kamala Harris right away, absolutely lying about the curriculum in Florida that Governor Ron DeSantis has signed legislation to change the curriculum away from queer theory and all this kind of study, black queer theory and all this kind of nonsense that black students were going to be studying. And now we're actually going to be able to focus on black history in America and black slavery. But here's the race hustler. This is the only thing this chick is good at. She sucks at her job as vice president. Everybody knows it. All the staffers know it. Democrats know it. But for some reason on this issue, when it comes to race hustling, Kamala Harris is pretty good. Remember, that's what she did in the debates, the presidential debates against Joe Biden and the whole busing issue. But after that, she is an empty shell. She is absolutely nothing. And now she's disgusting and she's lying about Florida's curriculum. So we'll play the video of this liar, this no good, evil person that will not propel to the White House of the United States because nobody wants her, including Democrats. and I'll show you, I'll break down how she's completely lying about Florida's curriculum by giving you some of Florida's curriculum thanks to the National Review. Stay tuned for some quick program messaging. We'll break down this liar's lies in just a sec.
Just yesterday in the state of Florida, they decided middle school students will be taught that enslaved people benefited from slavery. They insult us in an attempt to gaslight us, and we will not stand for it.
All right. So middle schoolers are being taught that blacks benefited from slavery. Now, here's what they are being taught. And here's what they are being taught. And this lady is gaslighting us. All right, so here's what the middle schoolers will be taught. And colleges, high schoolers or college students, so on, etc. The living conditions of slaves in British North American colonies, the Caribbean, Central America, and South America, including infant mortality rates of slaves, the harsh conditions and their consequences on British American plantations, the undernourishment, climate conditions, infant and child mortality rates of the enslaved versus the free, the harsh conditions in the Caribbean plantations, poor nutrition, rigorous labor, disease. Oh, by the way, Gabe, I should have said this in the opening. By the way, did anybody tell you that this lady comes from a heritage of slave owners? This lady comes from a heritage of slave owners. She is a privileged woman. She is a privileged woman whose father was a Stanford professor. Her mother held a doctorate, I believe it was, or held a doctorate in cancer research. This lady has no experience at all to the Black American experience. None. She's a descendant of slave owners, and she has the audacity to come here and lie. What a fraud. I can't stand this chick. What a fraud. So, the harsh conditions and their consequences on British American plantations, the undernourishment, I've read some of this, climate conditions, infant and child mortality rates of the enslaved versus the harsh conditions in the Caribbean plantations, poor nutrition, rigorous labor, disease, how the South tried to prevent slaves from escaping and their efforts to end the Underground Railroad. Man, that's a lot of slavery being taught in the new Florida curriculum. The overwhelming death rates of slaves caused by the practice, the many ways in which Africans resisted slavery, the ramifications of prejudice, racism, and stereotyping on individual freedoms. Also, how the South tried to prevent slaves from escaping and their efforts to end the Underground Railroad, the overwhelming death rates. I've mentioned that. The ramifications of prejudice, racism, and stereotyping on individual freedoms, and the struggles faced by American women in the 19th century as it relates to issues of suffrage, business, and access to education. Many of these modules apply to Florida specifically. So there's a list of 191 items. National Review literally listed 191 items where the word slaves is included 23 times. The word slave is included 96 times, and the word slavery is included 45 times when it comes to that. Instruction includes what life was like for earliest slaves and the emancipated. I'm just going to give you some of these, just so you know the facts. I'm just reading this right off of the website, so you can know the facts. And the list is very extensive. Again, I'm not going to go through all of it, but it is 191 items long that the Florida curriculum will now educate blacks on when it or Floridians on when it comes to slavery, particularly in Florida. Examine the Underground Railroad and how former slaves partner with other free people and groups in assisting those escaping from slavery. Examine key figures and events in abolitionist movements. Instruction will include the Emancipation Proclamation, 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment to the Constitution of the U.S. Examine the roles and contributions of significant African Americans during westward expansion. So this is some of the stuff that they might be talking about, right? Because slaves that did learn trades when they were slaves used those trades when they went up north. Some did, and they learned to use those trades to make money. What's wrong with that? Is that true or not? Good God, man. Examine the experience and contributions of African Americans in early Florida. Instruction includes judicial and legislative actions concerning slavery. Describe the history and evolution of slave codes. Instruction includes the comparative treatment of indentured servants of European and African extraction. Instruction includes the transition from an indentured to a slave-based economy. Describe the contact of European explorers with systematic slave trading in Africa. In other words, stuff that black students have never been taught, and it'll be more in depth. Examine the service and sacrifice of African patriots during the Revolutionary era, such as Crispus Attucks, Peter Salem, James Armistead, Lafayette. The First Rhode Island Regiment analyzed slave revolts that happened in early colonial America and how political leaders reacted to it. The revolt in New York, 1712 revolt in New York City, the Stonewall Rebellion of 1739 are included. Analyze events that involved or affected Africans from the founding of the nation through Reconstruction. Explain early congressional actions regarding the institution of slavery. This is what's in the Florida curriculum, and and the vice president is sitting there and just completely lying to her audience because it's all the left can do. All they can do is get you all riled up and mad and angry and give you disinformation, because this is intentional. This is disinformation. The vice president of the United States is intentionally trying to deceive black Americans in order to score points in hopes to win an election. And she's the one that is dividing us. She's the one that's gaslighting us. Explain how early congressional actions regarding the institution of slavery, the Northwest Ordinance of 1787, the 3/5 Compromise Act prohibiting importation of slaves of 1808, explain the effect of the cotton industry on the expansion of slavery due to Eli Whitney's cotton gin. And I got to tell you, Ron DeSantis, the way he responded to this was just crappy. He's got to do a better job of that. He should have, frankly, he should have this list and be ready when the left attacks him and just whip it out. Examine the various duties and trades performed by slaves: agriculture work, painting, carpentry, tailoring, domestic service, blacksmithing, transportation. Here's the one issue. All of those things that I mentioned, here's the one issue that she was talking about. 191. Here's the one that she focused on. Instruction includes how slaves develop skills which, in some instances, could be applied for their personal benefit. So if they learned a skill that could be applied for their personal benefit after slavery, guess what? They used it, and they will be smart to do so. What an ignoramus. Instruction includes how collaboration of free blacks, whites, churches, and organizations assisted in the underground Identify political figures who strove to abolish the institution of slavery. Thaddeus Stevens, Abraham Lincoln, Zachariah Chandler. Evaluate various abolitionist movements that continuously push to end slavery. Instruction includes the Society of Friends, Quakers, and their efforts to end slavery throughout the United States. Instruction includes writings by Africans living in the United States and their effect on the abolitionist movement. Sojourner Truth, Frederick Douglass, William Wells Brown. Examine how the status of slaves, those who had escaped slavery, and free blacks affected their contributions to the Civil War effort. Examine the causes, courses, and consequences of the slave trade in the colonies from 1609 to 1776. I could go on and on and on. Examine the condition of slavery as it existed in Africa, Asia, and the Americas and Europe prior to 1619. In other words, slavery was universal. See, the truth is they don't want you to know some of that truth, right? Instruction includes how trading in slaves developed in African lands. Don't want to teach people that. Instruction includes the practice of Barbary pirates and kidnapping Europeans and selling them into slavery in countries. Oh my goodness. We can't have that. The list goes on and on. I don't think this is boring, but I want to make sure that I'm not boring you. But the list is, it's expansive. Analyze the development of labor system using indentured servitude contracts with English settlers and Africans early in Jamestown, Virginia. Instruction includes how slavery among indigenous peoples of the Americas was utilized prior to and after European colonization. Instruction includes indentured servitude of poor English settlers and the extension of indentured servitude to the first Africans brought to Jamestown. Instruction includes the impact of the increased demand for land in the colonies, and the effects on the cost of labor resulting from the shift of indentured servitude to slavery. I mean, this stuff is so expansive. I could read it all the way up to bedtime. And if I were to read it to bedtime, I would be using My Pillow. Let me talk to you about this real quick. On My Pillow's 20-year anniversary, with over 80 million My Pillows sold, Mike Lindell and My Pillow want to thank each and every one of you by giving you the lowest price in history for their My Pillows. They're marked down from $69.98, a queen size My Pillow, to $19.98, exclusive for my listeners. Also, you'll receive discounts on all My Pillow products: the bed sheets, mattress toppers, pet beds, mattresses, My Slippers, so much more. So if you wanted to try anything on My Pillow, now is the time to do so. Go to mypillow.com, click on the radio podcast square at the top of the page, and enter my name, Carl, and these discounts will be available to you once you do that. If you prefer, you can give them a call, 800-858-0263. Don't forget, 10-year warranty, 60-day money-back guarantee with all of My Pillow products. Go to mypillow.com, use the promo code Carl, C-A-R-L, or give them a call, 800-858-0263, 800-858-0263. Don't forget to tell them that Carl sent you. All right, American jobs, American manufacturing, and a good night's rest. All right, also, instruction includes the impact of the increased demand for land in the colonies and the effects on the cost of labor resulting from the shift of indentured servitude to slavery. Man, this is fascinating. I'll just go over a couple more. Instruction includes the Virginia Code regarding slaves and servants of 1705. Analyze the reciprocal roles of the triangular trade routes between Africa and the Western Hemisphere, Africa and Europe and the Western Hemisphere. Man, I want to take this course because it sounds like if I take this course or the new curriculum in Florida, I will be the most well-versed and the most knowledgeable in the entire United States about the industry and the suffering of slaves in the United States of America. Man. Good job, Florida legislature. Good job, Ron DeSantis. Screw you, Vice President Kamala Harris. Guys, I appreciate you tuning in to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Please subscribe to the podcast wherever you go to get your podcast, all right? We would really appreciate that. Also, if you're on YouTube and Rumble, please subscribe there. And rate and review. Give us a 5, please, so that we can move up the charts and more people could hear about us, on all things social media. at The Carl Jackson Show. We're on Instagram. We're on Twitter. We're on Facebook, Getter, True Social, wherever you are. If you're on one of those platforms, you can find me there. All right. And until next time, don't grow weary doing good. God bless you.